Hey everyone, it's Dr. Sherry here with the next episode of Off the Couch. And if you caught my post yesterday, today we're going to be talking about a mind full of shoulds and what we must, not should, but what we must do about our mind full of shoulds. So I'm going to start off by first saying again, I would love your questions and comments. It really makes the experience for you and other listeners much more valuable, because when you ask a question, somebody else might be thinking it, but maybe they didn't ask, or somebody else might have a comment and they might be inspired or encouraged by your question or comment. And so again, to get the most use out of this, I would love to hear from you. So let's dive right into talking about a mind full of shoulds. So I know that I am not alone when I say that many of us, myself mainly, we live in a world of shoulds. Those come from both inside and they come from outside, right? So our shoulds are things that it's kind of like a language that we speak with ourselves. We say, I should do this, or I should do that. I'm going to share with you right off the bat a story to exemplify what we're going to be talking about with shoulds. So my first question to you is, do you have a mind full of shoulds? Do you frequently find yourself thinking, I should go to the gym, I should clean up the house, I should make this transition in my life, I should choose this option? Or conversely, do you find yourself looking back and asking yourself these questions, or saying these things to yourself, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have chosen that route, I shouldn't have? And so we talk to ourselves in this language with this word should, and we're going to define that and talk just about how much it really dirties up and clutters our mind. And so let me share a story with you. So I'm going to talk about how both internal shoulds and external shoulds affect our health and happiness, and what I did about it that you can do about it too, to clean up your mind, to declutter your mind of all of these shoulds that are just debilitating your health and happiness and well-being overall. So initially, when I got licensed as a clinical psychologist, I was trying to figure out how I was going to establish myself. And as tradition would have it, you should go out and hang out your own shingle, right? You should start doing therapy. You should join insurance networks to be able to get your name out there, to be able to get people coming to see you. And so that's what I did. I listened to all of these kind of external, but also internal shoulds. I had really adopted what was external, the external kind of expectations of my career, of my profession. And I said, well, that's what I personally should do. So as soon as I got licensed, that's what I did. I went and I hung out my own shingle, and I opened up my practice, and I joined all sorts of insurance networks. And before you know it, I had lots of people coming through the doors. And the fascinating thing about shoulds is they keep you from doing what your original hopes and dreams and desires are. So interestingly enough, going back here, I never wanted to be a therapist. You might be saying, well, why did you start your own therapy practice, Sherry? Well, that's because it's what I should do, right? I should open up my own therapy practice, but I never wanted to be a therapist. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I loved it. I loved being a part of the people's lives that I got to know through the therapy process. And I was very good at it. Actually, I'm still very good at it. I just call it coaching now and not therapy. But I found myself in this situation where I was doing something that I never wanted to do. I was seeing people day in, day out, hour after hour. And again, I enjoyed it. It was good. But overall, that wasn't what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was to bring my message to larger audiences. I wanted to speak. I wanted to write. And here I was confined to these four walls. I was doing good work. It wasn't unprofitable work in terms of fulfillment for myself and fulfillment for the people that I got to see, but it wasn't the ultimate work that I had the desire to do. And so here I am now behind these four walls, being a therapist, something I never wanted to be, which is why I got my doctorate, right? If I wanted to be a therapist, I could have stopped at my master's, but I wanted to be a speaker and a writer ultimately. But I did everything that my mind, that society, that expectations said I should do. And so I opened up my own practice. And there I was, and I found myself really struggling. I actually went through a significant period of anxiety where I was trying to make this shift from being a therapist to being a speaker and to going out and sharing my message with larger audiences. And so it really started to affect my health. It started to affect my happiness. I was having trouble sleeping at night. And here's why. Because now that I finally had this moment of realization that I needed to pursue what I actually wanted to do, not what I should do. Now I was having trouble sleeping. I was getting sick to my stomach. I was worried all the time. And it was because now I was ruminating on this mind full of shoulds. Well, should I make the next step? And if I do, how should I do that? But all of this while I'm talking about these shoulds and hey guys, thanks for joining. While I'm asking myself and using this should in my mind, I'm not doing anything. I was not taking any action whatsoever. Well, long story short, I finally decided to take action. And guess what happened when I stopped mulling over all of these shoulds and I actually decided to do something? I was liberated. I started thriving. I was able to take my message to more people. And then I'm going to share with you how these external shoulds, not the things that we tell ourselves, but the things that other people tell us, affected me. So I started doing what I wanted to do. I started going to speak and I started doing it for free. And I didn't care where I spoke. I just wanted to share this positive, strengths-based message so that people could live a meaningful and fulfilled life. And I started to hear a lot of shoulds from people who love and care about me. Are you sure this is what you should be doing, Sherry? Are you sure that you shouldn't just go back to being a therapist? I mean, you worked so hard. You got your clinical psychology license. That's what you should be doing. And these people were well-intentioned. I believe they had my best interest at heart. But now I'm getting kind of pummeled, right, with these shoulds from people outside. And again, I started to feel some anxiety, but I persevered through that. And I decided that I was going to continue to pursue, in other words, continue to engage in action and not ruminate over what I should or shouldn't do or what other people thought I should or shouldn't do. And I won't tell you that it comes without risk, because it doesn't. When you stop thinking about shoulds and you actually decide to take action in your life, you're going to run into a lot of resistance. You're going to run into a lot of challenges, and I like to call them opportunities. That's what you're going to run into. But you have to, when you're stuck in a place, in a mindset where you are only thinking about your shoulds, I want you to understand that that is debilitating you. It's keeping you from taking action of any sort. I was actually just having a conversation with somebody earlier, and I said, what do these things have in common? I should have done this, I could have done this, or I would have done this. What do those three things have in common? And feel free to type in the comments and play along. But what they have in common is ultimately, it says, I didn't, right? I could have, I should have, I would have. Ultimately, I didn't, right? So that's the same thing when we're living in a world of shoulds, thinking about what we should do in the future, we're not taking action. I think of shoulds as similar to try, right? As Yoda says, there is no try, there is only do. When we think of what we should do, we're failing to take action. And I am not at all saying that we shouldn't deliberate, that we shouldn't mull over decisions, right? Take all the impact into account, all of the outcomes into account. Yes, we must do that, right, in order to make the best decision for ourselves. My point is that when we continue to think about what we should do, it keeps us in a state of inaction. And let me tell you, when you have inaction, it affects your health and it affects your happiness. You know, my story that I was telling you earlier about not being able to sleep, I was constantly thinking about what I should do and I wasn't taking action. So because of that, I started to experience anxiety, tension. Of course you can't sleep when you're constantly worried about the future and this uncertainty, right? Well, that's what shoulds do. They promote anxiety, they promote uncertainty. They do not promote action or decision. And it's like living in an alternate reality. It's like living in your mind in a hope of something. I'll use a very simple example. I hear so many people all the time say, I wish, or not I wish, but I should go to the gym. Okay, well, let me talk a little bit about these shoulds and what they're attached to. Shoulds are not attached to things or circumstances or things you want to do or events. Shoulds are really attached to what you will experience when you do that thing. So for example, I'm gonna give you a format, a fill in the blank format. For you, I want you to think for you of a should that you might have. I should blank. Okay, I want you to go ahead and think about that. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm so happy to have you here with me. Feel free to comment or ask questions. I should blank. Okay, now that you have that, I want you to say, I should blank because then I will blank. All right, I'm going to go back to that example of I should go to the gym. Okay, I hear people say this all the time. I should work out, I should go to the gym, I should exercise, I should eat better, right? It's not about actually exercising or eating better. It's about the feeling or the belief that would come if you did those things. So for example, if I said for myself, I should exercise. I should exercise because then I will feel better about myself. So it's not really about the should exercise. It's really about I want to feel better about myself, right? But the should is keeping me from realizing that. It's attaching it to this event, this circumstance. I should eat better. Well, why? Who says? What do you want from that? Why do you want to eat better? Do you want to feel better? Do you want to be healthier? What is the outcome for you personally, that internal reaction, emotional reaction or thought reaction that you will get from actually doing that thing? So now I'm going to talk, I talked a little bit about how it affects your health. By the way, when you're filling your mind with shoulds and you're taking in action, not only are you going to have trouble sleeping, but it's going to affect your immune system. You know, when we don't sleep well, it compromises our immune system. We're more susceptible to illnesses, common colds, things like that. We're more susceptible to sadness, depression. Why? Because we're not taking action. We're too busy focusing on the shoulds, right? And I'm sorry, guys, I am not feeling my best today, so I've got a little drink of water here. Excuse me, just a moment. I've got a little bit of a sore throat this evening, and that's not going to stop me. Not because I should do this, but because I want to do this, and I am doing this. So I decided to take action. But the other thing that it does, you know, when you're stressed out in your mind, and you're thinking about all these shoulds, again, living in this alternate reality, your stress hormone, the bad stress hormone, I know you guys have heard about it on TV commercials, cortisol goes up. And when cortisol goes up, a lot of things happen. Our blood pressure goes up, our weight goes up, our health in general begins to get poorer. And if we practice over a long period of time worrying about or thinking about deliberating over shoulds rather than taking action, that chronic impact of cortisol in your system is going to be evident in your energy, in your physical well-being, in your health. You're going to hear things from your doctor when you go to visit, right? And I know that I don't intend to simplify this. I understand that there are health problems. My point here is to identify the link between your mindset and your physical health. So there's a strong link, right, between your mind and your gut. That's why we say things like, oh, I got butterflies in my stomach, right? Oh, I was so nervous. There's a strong connection between our mind and our body. And so I want you to take this seriously when you're thinking about how many shoulds you're telling yourself. I would encourage each of you watching, and those of you who are going to watch the replay, to write down a list of your shoulds. What are the things that you're mulling over in your mind that you should do? And then think about what the actual outcome of that thing is. Why do you want that? And I would even challenge, do you really want that? Because if we're spending all of our time thinking about what we should do we really want that thing? Because if we really wanted it, wouldn't we do it? Right? Again, going back to the could have, the should have, the would have, it all equates to I didn't. So it's the same thing if you're thinking about in the future, well, I should, well, I could, but you're not, right? When we're thinking about things in that way, we are not doing them. It's resulting in inaction. Now, I said that a mind full of shoulds messes with your health, right? We've already talked about that. And it messes with your happiness. So let me talk a little bit about happiness. Well, again, we can go back to the mind-body connection. But when you are in a perpetual state of inaction, of mulling over these shoulds, it keeps you from making a decision. And when you don't make a decision, you don't take action, right? And I talk a lot with my hands, guys, sorry, I know that might be a little bit distracting. And when you don't take action, it is impossible to experience a sense of accomplishment or that liberation that I talked about before. When I finally decided to kick my shoulds to the curb, get them out of my head, and take action and do what I knew I needed to do for me to fulfill my desires, I was liberated. I was happy, right? But going back to that place of where I was stuck in my shoulds and remembering such a hard time dealing with anxiety because I was stuck in my shoulds, that kept me from experiencing that. So that example I share with you, not to talk about myself, but to help you understand that I know personally the impact of living in a world of shoulds, of living in that alternate reality. And I don't want that for anybody. We don't need to do that, right? If there's things that we need to do to take action, let's move on now to talking about, okay, we've got this mind full of shoulds. It's keeping me from being healthy. It's keeping me from being happy. What do I do about it, right? Anybody have any ideas? Feel free to chime in. What do I do to get rid of my shoulds? Well, a wise woman once told me this statement, and it just really resonated and stuck with me. She said, that which you resist stays with you. So I'll say that again. She said, that which you resist stays with you. So it's not as simple as saying, I'm going to actually put a little pun here. I should stop saying all the shoulds, right? You can't do that. It's like if I were to say, I want you to not think, stop it. Don't think about a pink elephant. Now you're thinking about a pink elephant, right? No, I want you to stop thinking about it. Stop doing that. It's not helping you. Stop thinking about that pink elephant. You're going to keep thinking about the pink elephant, right? And so it's the same thing with shoulds. You can't just simply stop having shoulds. But what you can do is make a list. That's the first thing I would encourage each of you to do. Make a list of what your shoulds are. We all have them, and we have our own. And we have those recurring ones. They come back. Sometimes they go away. They creep their way back in. We see something. Somebody says something to us, right? So, like I was talking about earlier, people who mean well and want the best for you sometimes tell you what you should do. And it really impacts us in such a way that we take it like as truth. But then we still don't do anything with it because it's really not what we want. Again, I would say that if it's something that you think you should do, you probably shouldn't, right? Because that's typically where we're stuck in fear. We're stuck in something that we don't really want. If you really want to do something, you will engage in action. So list all your shoulds. That's the first thing that I want you to do, is list all your shoulds. The second thing I want you to do is, what would the outcome of that thing be, right? So like I said before, if I want to eat better, I should eat better. What's the outcome of that? Why is that important? Is that important to me? Or is that important to society? Is that important to other people in my life? Is that really something that I want? Or is that just a should that's been imposed upon me and that I've made my own? That's a question that only you can answer. And I encourage you to be honest with yourself about whether or not your should that results in this outcome is something that you really want, right? So do that, list your shoulds. Number 2, list what the outcome would be. Number 3, spend some time with yourself. I promise you, if you spend some time with yourself, listening to yourself, listen to your heart, listen to your mind. It's okay to ask other people in your life what they think. Ultimately, though, you're the expert on you. Nobody else is. You're the expert on you. And so you know what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want. And this is an opportunity for you to sit with yourself and say, is this really something I want? And if it's not, chuck the should. And instead of saying, I should do that, say, I won't do that, right? That ends the should. So essentially, it's not stopping the should, it's replacing the should with the I won't. Or conversely, in that time of self-reflection, if you're sitting and with yourself and you realize, you know what, this is something that I want, right? Then you're going to say, I will, or I am. Again, you're replacing the should. You're not just eliminating it. You're creating a new habit of either saying, I will or I won't. I do or I don't. And it's just time to be honest with yourself. And really, there's a tremendous liberation in that. Our society does not understand that, by the way. And it's something as simple as, which I think is what perpetuates the shoulds in our life. And as something as simple as somebody asks you if you can come to an event. And what's the kind of like socially acceptable thing to say? We say, well, I'll try to come. Or, Facebook even gives us an option to say, maybe, in case we need that out. Society doesn't as quickly and easily accept, I will or I won't. And if you will or you won't, they want an explanation. Guess what? You don't know any explanation. You decide what you're going to do. You can explain to your loved ones, you can explain to your friends and family why it is that you are going to do that thing or why it is that you are not going to do that thing. Ultimately, the decision is yours. And remember, your health and happiness rest on whether or not you can clean up your mind of all of those shoulds. Declutter your mind of all the shoulds, get rid of them, right? And start replacing them with action, with actually doing or not doing, choosing to or choosing not to. So I don't think I have any questions or comments, and it looks like we've run almost the whole half hour. I'm so grateful for each of you for joining me today. And I'll just leave you with this once again. If you think you should, you probably shouldn't. But take some time to evaluate for yourself. And if you have a mind full of shoulds, it's time to clean it up. Private message me, or you can email me at drsherryspeaks@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from you soon. We'll see you next week on Off the Couch with Dr. Sherry, where my hope is to shift perspectives and speak life. Take care, everyone.